Your health is precious. Protecting it from harm's way such that you are not susceptible to harm is our philosophy on Better You Today. On today's edition of the program, the highly infectious zoonotic disease, Anthrax, will be our focus. Dr. Oguche Ada Oguche, our resource person, will simplify the concept of zoonosis and other relevant terms during the program. Welcome to Better You Today, your favorite health and wellness package on the network service of the NTA. My name is Yetunde Jayola. A short break beckons. Please stay tuned. We shall kickstart this edition with a mini documentary on anthrax. This will set the tune for our interview with the veterinary doctor in the house. Thank you for believing in our program.
The essence of the provision of public health care is to provide affordable and accessible health care to our citizens, irrespective of their ability to pay. Adequate enlightenment and awareness goes a long way to curtail, check the spread, and nip in the bud the outbreak of an epidemic. Through advocacy, awareness creation, adopting a robust use of the print, electronic, and social media platforms. Various ministries, departments, and agencies worked round the clock, synergizing towards ensuring that no anthrax outbreak occurs in Nigeria. Anthrax is a very serious infectious disease caused by the spore-forming bacterium Bacillium anthracis and primarily affects animals including cattle, sheep, and goats. However, it can also affect humans. The disease can occur in three main forms: inhalational anthrax and gastrointestinal anthrax. A recent detection of the disease in Niger State necessitated the dispatch of surveillance team to affected areas as an early prevention mechanism to curtail the spread of anthrax. In its analysis, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control (NCDC) observed that the observed animals suddenly died were bleeding from the orifices without evidence of blood clotting. Based on this development, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in collaboration with the Niger State government, has taken proactive measures to ensure that the outbreak is controlled and quickly curtailed in the country. Measures taken include quarantine of the affected farm, deployment of 50,000 doses of anthrax vaccine for ring vaccination of animals species around the affected farms, educating the farm workers using the One Health approach on the symptoms, preventive measures, and what to do when they notice any sign of disease. Others are finalizing plans for statewide vaccination of susceptible animals against anthrax, intensification of passive surveillance activities in livestock farms, markets, and abattoirs, and heightening of targeted public awareness campaign of anthrax.
We are moving on and striving forward with a purpose on Better You Today. Without much ado, it is now time to unveil our specialist, Dr. Oguchi Ada Oguchi, a veterinary doctor, to elucidate further on anthrax. Please do not go anywhere.
Anthrax is an infectious and highly fatal disease of bacterial origin caused by Bacillus anthracis. So the name anthrax is gotten from the name of the causative agent. Anthrax affects majorly warm-blooded animals and particularly domestic animals like cattle, sheep and goats, pigs, and it can also affect wildlife. Anthrax is particularly important because the causative organism is able to form spores that makes it difficult to eradicate. The organism exists in two forms. In its vegetative form, while in the host, it is able to cause disease. On the other hand, once the bacteria gets exposed to oxygen, it's able to sporulate and form spores. Spores are basically forms of bacteria or organisms, different organisms, because bacteria, fungi, and even plants in some instances can form spores. So there are forms where organisms are able to survive with minimal metabolism and they are able to resist some of the environmental factors that will normally eradicate them. Anthrax is able to form spores that survive for so long. In fact, the spores of anthrax can survive for decades. It means that even when we think that the disease has been eradicated, the spores are just lying there somewhere, waiting for an opportunity to get exposed, and then it can cause disease. Beyond the fact that this is very fatal in animals, it's also zoonotic. By zoonotic, I mean it is also able to affect humans. And that is why it is a disease of significant importance and of particularly public health interest. The spores of the organism is normally found in the soil. And what happens is that when herbivores, like cattle, sheep, goats, go out to graze, if they are exposed to the spores of anthrax in the soil and then they inhale or ingest a significant quantity of the spores, then they come down with the disease. Anthrax is able to cause disease at different levels. It could be peracute, it could be acute, or it could be chronic. So in the peracute form of anthrax, when animals are exposed, it happens really, really fast. The course of the disease is very, very short. Most of the times, the farmer is unable to identify anything except that the animals are dead. So it manifests with some nervous signs. You would see staggering, convulsion. You would see in some instances dyspnea, which is difficulty in breathing, and sudden death. So that's how it occurs in the peracute form, and this can happen without anyone around or the farmer who is keeping the animals understanding what is going on. In the acute form as well, it's marked by significant involvement of the respiratory system. There is respiratory distress, there could be cardiac distress, there is fever, which is a rise or increase in the body temperature of the animal. And there are also nervous signs like staggering, convulsion, confusion, that also eventually results in death. Even in the acute form, a lot of times the farmer is unable to really observe these clinical signs, or before you make sense out of these clinical signs, the animal is dead. But it's important to note that when this happens, there are important things that should be looked out for. To identify anthrax in animals, you will do that via the clinical signs or via laboratory diagnosis. In the chronic form as well, you would find majority of the symptoms, but the progression is slightly slower. So in the chronic form, which is not as common as the acute or pre-acute form, the farmer is able to identify some of these clinical signs. An animal that suddenly dies. There are so many diseases you can think about, what we call differential diagnosis. And once you make a list of these differentials, then you look out for other things that will make you confirm that maybe you are dealing with anthrax. Lead poisoning is one of the possible differentials that can easily be mistaken for anthrax. Bloating, which is accumulation of gas in the rumen of a ruminant animal. Lightning strikes is another situation that can make you consider whether you are dealing with something else or not anthrax. And then Clostridium or clostridial diseases, and there are quite a number of them, it's another differential of anthrax. But what you typically see in anthrax is a farmer, a cattle farmer, a small ruminant farmer, by small ruminant I mean sheep and goats, wakes up and notices that animals are dead. No sign, no observation days prior, or the farmer might observe a few things that are not looking so serious, and while the farmer might have called in a vet to institute treatment, the animal still dies anyway. And what do you notice at the death of the animal? First of all, you would see that there is bleeding from the orifices, from the eyes, from the nose, from the mouth, from ears, and even the anus. You could find some frothy blood also around the mouth area as well. Beyond that, animals that die due to anthrax would normally not follow through the normal course of post-mortem changes. By that I mean rigor mortis particularly would not happen. Rigor mortis is one of the changes that happens in animals after death that leads to the stiffening of the muscles. So in this case, there will be no rigor mortis, and the blood from the animal will not clot. If there is no prior diagnosis or suspicion of vitamin K deficiency, it gives enough reason to suspect that you might be dealing with anthrax. Humans are able to get anthrax via contact with infected animals, and the contact could be direct or indirect. So there are certain categories of individuals that are at higher risk of exposure to anthrax. A ruminant farmer or a cattle farmer, a sheep and goat farmer, is obviously at a higher risk of getting exposed to anthrax. A veterinarian who attends to sick animals is at high risk of getting exposed to anthrax. But beyond this category, you have others like workers in the abattoir, the butchers, the regular guy out there selling suya, who is in constant contact with live animals. But you also have paraprofessionals like customs, the immigrations, working at border posts where there is movement of animals in and out, and also of animal products like hides and skin. Also, individuals who consume undercooked meat are also at risk. Now, an individual will get anthrax if you are in touch, if you are touching, if you are inhaling spores from an infected animal. And this can happen in about 3 or 4 different ways. So I'll start with the cutaneous anthrax in humans. So cutaneous anthrax simply means that the individual gets exposed to the spores via the skin. So it could be that there is a cut on the body, there is a wound, an abrasion, and the human rather is in touch with an animal that has anthrax, or in touch with a surface that is contaminated with anthrax spores. then the spores can actually penetrate the skin and cause cutaneous anthrax. Cutaneous anthrax is the most common form of anthrax. It is also not the most deadly, so it means that it can be treated if identified early. And when anthrax spores get into the human system via this route, it normally causes skin lesions like painless ulcers, some swellings that could be limited to the head and the neck and the hand region. All right, but beyond that, there could also be challenges around the esophagus with breathing, with swallowing, and the likes. But of course, there's also fever. In an area that is known to be endemic, where anthrax is endemic, gives sort of a suspicion. But aside the cutaneous form, there's also inhalation anthrax, which happens when an individual inhales anthrax spores. And this could also be from contact with an animal that is infected with anthrax. So when you inhale these spores, it affects mostly your respiratory system. So there is a lot of respiratory involvement, challenges with breathing, cardiac issues, some form of pneumonia, fever as well is recurrent here. But the respiratory form of anthrax can be very fatal. It's the most dangerous form of anthrax and also requires early detection so that there can be immediate treatment. Otherwise, this form of anthrax can be a lot more challenging. But I'll speak again about gastrointestinal anthrax as well, which is another form of anthrax that can be gotten via ingestion, eating of the spores, and that can present with symptoms that could have digestive challenges, including diarrhea, bloody diarrhea, and the likes. So finally, you have injection anthrax, which normally happens in individuals that are into drugs, has been reported. It's not very common. It has been reported individuals exchanging needles for injecting heroin and other abusive drugs, and that also can be a way of transmitting anthrax. And when this happens, because the spores are injected deeply, it makes the course of the disease rather rapid and difficult to identify. People that are at risk need to be careful. So you are handling an animal, you need to wear your gloves, you need to wear your mask, and ensure that you keep all the basic biosecurity or hygiene principles. But very importantly, reporting. So if there is a case of suspected anthrax, either by a farmer or individuals who see animals that are just lying there, suddenly dead by the side of the road, please do not make contact with these animals. Reach out and look for the nearest veterinary doctor in your locality and report this. And you could also report to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture or any of the state's ministries of agriculture. That's a protocol. There are protocols in place by the authorities to ensure that such an animal is disposed of properly, is tested to confirm whether it's a case of anthrax, and then the whole environment could be properly quarantined if need be and handled. Aside that, quarantine is another very important control tool. So when animals are sick, they should be kept isolated from other animals and should be treated until they are sure that they are safe. To prevent animal to human transmission, first of all, people need to stop eating dead animals. That's not right because it could have died due to anthrax. So people need to ensure that they are not eating dead animals, they are not making contact with animals that may have died from anthrax, and they're properly cooking their meat and adhering to basic hygiene principles. Wildlife like deers, antelopes are also affected by anthrax. And this, what we call bushmeat, there are delicacies around here.
Special thanks to Dr. Uche for value addition, education, and enlightenment. Be so busy improving yourself that you have no time to criticize others. Before we call it a wrap, here are additional bits of information that will further our understanding of anthrax.
The course of the manifestation of anthrax in animals is very short. In most cases, the animals are dead before the farmers realize the incidence or outbreak of the disease, leading to a significant economic impact. Anthrax is a fatal disease. Vaccination of farm animals is essential to preventing the risk of losing the animals to anthrax. Also, anthrax is a zoonotic disease, hence, it can affect farmers as well. A zoonotic disease is one that can be transmitted from animals to humans. Reverse zoonosis is when a disease is transmitted from humans to animals. Experts say the latter can also occur in the case of anthrax. Spreading of the disease is mechanical, physical contact, not contagious. Therefore, necessary measures should be put in place to prevent infection. Rare cases of human to human transmission occurs. Various ways of humans contracting anthrax include skin coming into contact with infected animal, inhalation of the spores, eating the meat of the infected animal, gastrointestinal, or use of injections for those who are into drugs. Clinical signs in humans depends on the route of infection. Anthrax can survive for decades in the environment. It is heat resistant and resistant to a lot of chemicals as well. So when an animal dies suddenly, do not eat the meat. Contact the nearest veterinary doctor or Federal State Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that the spread of the disease is curtailed. Season impacts the spread of anthrax. Erosion can expose buried carcasses, and the spores affect other animals, pigs, dogs, and even grazing cattle. Also, anthrax has been used as a biological weapon. In 2001, anthrax spore powder was deliberately put into letters that were mailed through the United States postal system. 22 people, including 12 mail handlers, contracted anthrax, and 5 of these 22 people died as a result.
There is no challenge more challenging than the challenge to improve yourself. Thank you for investing your time with us on Better You Today. Join us next time for an equally revealing, educative, and informative episode of the program. My name is Yetunde Jayola. Do visit our YouTube channel and our social media platforms displayed on your screen to watch these and recent editions of the program. In the words of Paulo Coelho, When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. Goodbye, stay safe, and keep watching the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.